You're most famous, of course, for your time spent in the kitchens of the royal family.
For over 20 years he held his tongue, watching from the sidelines as the royal narrative unfolded, carefully polished by those in power. Darren McGrady, the former royal chef who once served the Queen, Prince Charles, and both young princes, was no ordinary staffer. His loyalty belonged to Princess Diana. At 63, he is finally ready to speak, and his words are not just confessions, they are explosive revelations. At the heart of this unexpected truth-telling stands none other than Queen Camilla. What Darren exposes has shaken the very foundation of royal mythmaking. It all started with a single unexpected comment, one that would set off a storm Darren McGrady never saw coming. As the world prepared for the grand coronation of King Charles III and Queen Camilla, the former royal chef, now 63 and long associated with Princess Diana's memory, did something no one anticipated. He offered public support for the occasion. "The first time I saw Princess Diana was at Buckingham Palace, the royal wedding. Time has passed," Darren said, and he believes it is possible to honor the present while still cherishing the past. On the surface, his words sounded calm, reasonable, even gracious. But the reaction online was outrageous. Social media erupted. Royal supporters and Diana loyalists alike found themselves in a fierce debate. Some commended Darren's maturity, his attempt at bridging the past and the present. But many saw it as an unthinkable betrayal. "Diana's spirit will never rest if you celebrate the woman who broke her," one comment read. Another went further: "You were her chef, her confidant. You should be exposing Camilla, not applauding her." For years Darren had been seen as a quiet protector of Diana's legacy, a man who held back out of loyalty, who never once addressed the woman many still blame for Diana's anguish. And that silence, especially about Camilla, had always raised eyebrows. Despite multiple interviews over the years, McGrady had managed to dodge the topic. Not once had he directly addressed Camilla Parker Bowles, once branded the most hated woman in Britain. Given how central Camilla's affair with Charles was to Diana's misery, the absence of commentary spoke volumes. The public never forgot. Even in 2005, a poll showed only 7% of Britons supported Camilla becoming queen. So when she was finally crowned in 2023 and Darren publicly approved, it felt like a rupture in everything he once stood for. Headlines now exploded. Darren McGrady was finally speaking, and what he revealed about Queen Camilla was more disturbing than anyone imagined. But before we spill it out, let us unfold life inside the palace, Darren's early days and his bond with Princess Diana. When Darren McGrady first walked through the grand gates of Buckingham Palace in 1982, he was just a young chef starting at the bottom, number 20 out of 20, in a staff kitchen ruled by strict hierarchy and long-standing tradition. Fresh-faced and eager, he never imagined his journey would lead to a quiet but powerful bond with one of the most beloved women in modern royal history, Princess Diana. That same year marked the birth of Prince William and, unknowingly, the beginning of a relationship that would stretch from royal kitchens to private grief, and from professional duty to heartfelt loyalty. The princess came into the kitchens at Balmoral Castle, and she was as beautiful close up. At the time, Darren's daily duties were humble. He prepped vegetables, most of them frozen, and followed the guidance of senior French chef Gabriel Chumi, who taught him not just how to serve royalty but how to understand the palace's silent codes of behavior. It was a world of distance and formality. But even amid the cold routine, there was one figure who brought warmth and life: Diana. McGrady first encountered her at Balmoral Castle, where the royal family spent their summers. Unlike most royals, Diana did not send servants with instructions. Instead, she walked into the kitchen herself, barefoot in a dressing gown, asking for snacks like yogurt, fruit, or orange juice for herself or the boys. Always polite, always thanking the staff, sometimes even helping stack plates, her down-to-earth nature stood out in a place built on hierarchy and unspoken rules. She was real, and that authenticity left a mark on Darren from the start. In those early years, Diana lit up palace life. She brought laughter to stiff dinners, danced freely at formal events, and offered a refreshing humanity that made the palace feel less like a fortress. McGrady always addressed her formally, but their connection grew stronger through the quiet familiarity of everyday rituals. One of those was her nightly request for a freshly made juice, carrot, celery, or apple, depending on her mood. But over time, Darren noticed subtle shifts. As her marriage to Prince Charles deteriorated, largely due to his ongoing relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles, Diana's appetite began to fade. One evening, she did not ask for her usual juice. Concerned, Darren made it anyway. She drank it in one gulp. Her eyes, he recalled, looked like she had been crying. Behind palace walls, long before tabloids caught on, McGrady saw the emotional weight Diana carried. In 1992, the separation between Diana and Charles became official. She left Buckingham Palace and moved into Kensington Palace with her sons. Darren thought that chapter of his life was over, until he received a call that stunned him. Diana wanted him to be her chef. He did not hesitate. Life at Kensington was cozier, more personal, far from the grandeur of Buckingham. But the pain lingered. Camilla's presence still haunted conversations, and whispers floated around the palace. One cruel rumor said Camilla had told a friend, "He is officially mine. He always has been." Darren did not know if Diana ever heard it, but he could see the toll. Even when hurting, Diana stayed graceful. She never lashed out. That is what made her Diana, Darren would later say. But the deeper their friendship grew, the more of her pain he witnessed. And at the center of that pain always was Camilla. Even within the calm Diana worked so hard to create at Kensington Palace, the shadows of her past refused to let go. The pain of her shattered marriage, the emotional scars from years of betrayal, and the lingering presence of Camilla Parker Bowles weighed heavily on her. No matter how polished the walls around her appeared, only a select few witnessed these hidden moments of vulnerability. And one of them was royal chef Darren McGrady. One quiet evening after dinner, as Darren tidied up, Diana entered the kitchen, not for food, but for comfort. She stood there for a while, eyes lowered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have always known I would never be queen," she said. "That girl who took my husband. She will be." The words hit Darren with a jolt. He did not know how to respond. But Diana did not expect an answer. "You only had to listen," she added, dabbing away a tear. In that stillness, years of heartbreak poured out. Diana had long feared being pushed aside, not just as a wife, but as a woman once destined to be Queen of England. Prince Charles's unwavering attachment to Camilla had taken a toll that no newspaper could truly capture. McGrady remembered the arguments, loud, emotional clashes echoing through Buckingham's hallways, and always, it was Camilla's name at the center of the storm. When the Camilla Gate tapes were released in 1993, confirming the rumors Diana had silently endured for years, the world was stunned. But for Darren, it simply made public what he had already seen behind the scenes. Diana didn't speak of the tapes with him. She didn't have to. Her withdrawn demeanor, the loss of appetite, the heaviness in her eyes, it said enough. Her eating disorder worsened, and McGrady, ever discreet, observed without intruding. Then came the 1995 BBC Panorama interview. Diana's raw admission, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded," shook the monarchy to its core. For the first time, the world saw her pain in her own words. It wasn't new to Darren, but it was finally being acknowledged by millions. She spoke of self-harm, of asking for help in the wrong ways, and in doing so, gave strength to others quietly fighting the same demons. But through the grief, Diana began to rebuild. A year into her new life at Kensington, Darren saw a change. She smiled more. She ate better. She found purpose in her work. And in a bold move, she spoke publicly about her bulimia, turning shame into strength and helping break the silence for countless others. "She looked the healthiest I'd ever seen her," Darren said. She was becoming herself again. The day Diana didn't come home, it was a quiet Sunday morning at Kensington Palace, and Darren McGrady was busy in the kitchen preparing a simple meal for Princess Diana. She was expected to return from Paris later that evening, where she had been on a trip. The plan was for her to reunite with her sons, Prince William and Harry, before they went back to school. It was supposed to be a peaceful day filled with home-cooked food, family time, and a brief moment of normalcy amid the chaos of royal life. But then everything changed in an instant. The television flickered to life with a breaking news headline, "Princess Diana in car crash." Thursday marks 20 years since Princess Diana was killed in a car crash inside a Paris tunnel. The words barely registered at first. Darren thought it might be a joke, but then the news flooded every channel. His heart sank as the truth hit him like a tidal wave. Diana was dead. She had been in a car crash in a Paris tunnel, pursued by paparazzi, and had passed away at just 36 years old. The hope that it was a mistake quickly faded. As he rushed into work, still in disbelief, he clung to the faint hope that somehow the tragedy was exaggerated. But when the palace sent over Diana's last will, the reality set in. There would be no return. No quiet dinner. No comforting the boys. Diana was gone. In the hours that followed, Kensington Palace was filled with sorrow. Staff members who had served Diana, who had stood by her, were left heartbroken. Darren quietly recalled how her meal had been ready, sitting untouched, waiting for her return. The world reacted with shock, but the grief that echoed in the days following her death was just as overwhelming. Millions of people mourned her loss, laying flowers at Kensington Palace, and the entire world seemed to come to a standstill. Elton John's re-recorded "Candle in the Wind" became the soundtrack of collective mourning. But amid this outpouring of sorrow, another quieter tension began to emerge. Rumors swirled that Camilla Parker Bowles had expressed a desire to attend Diana's funeral, perhaps hoping to soften public hostility. Some suggested that her presence could be seen as a gesture of goodwill, a step toward acceptance. However, Queen Elizabeth reportedly intervened, insisting that Camilla stay away. For Darren, this was the right call. The world would never have forgiven her, he said. Camilla attending would have felt like showing up at a crime scene she helped create. With that decision made, the stage was set for Diana's funeral, an event that the world would never forget. But there was one more powerful moment yet to unfold: the wedding Darren refused to attend. Why? Could the tension between public mourning and private betrayal finally reach its breaking point? Stay tuned to find out. The wedding he couldn't attend, Darren's silent protest against Camilla. When Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles finally exchanged vows on April 9, 2005, it was framed as the soft conclusion to a decades-long royal drama. The ceremony, held quietly at Windsor Guildhall followed by a blessing at St. George's Chapel, was meant to signal peace, closure even. For many, it felt like a long-overdue union. But for Darren McGrady, the former royal chef who had cooked for Princess Diana through her most heartbreaking years, it was anything but a happy ending. "I didn't watch. I didn't attend. I couldn't," Darren later admitted. "That day belonged to Diana in my heart." Though he had since moved to the United States and built a successful catering business, his connection to the late Princess of Wales never faded. As Charles and Camilla's wedding approached, McGrady's phone began buzzing, not with congratulations but with hushed messages from former palace colleagues. Many had once worked closely with Diana, and they all shared the same unsettled feeling. Something about the ceremony felt cold, wrong, almost like history was being quietly rewritten. To McGrady, the marriage didn't just mark a union. It marked a turning point. It was, as he described, a silent erasure of Diana's pain, her legacy. "They got what they wanted," he said, "but the cost was Diana." What disturbed him even more were the whispers trickling out of palace walls after Camilla's arrival. Trusted staff who had once served Diana were suddenly reassigned or let go. Charities she had passionately championed were now overlooked. Her presence, once so vibrant within the palace, began to dim, like a portrait taken down in silence. Amid this shift, one memory haunted Darren. Diana once softly confessed, "I'll never be queen. That girl who took my husband will be queen someday." On Charles and Camilla's wedding day, those words echoed louder than ever. And Darren wasn't the only one noticing. What was happening inside the palace was far more calculated than the public ever imagined. Now Camilla's chilling erasure of Diana's memory inside the palace, could this have been the plan all along? Stay tuned. Pure evil: how Camilla erased Diana from the palace. For years after Princess Diana's tragic passing, royal chef Darren McGrady kept his lips sealed. Out of grief, yes. Out of respect, certainly. But also perhaps because the truth he carried was too heavy, too explosive to share. His silence wasn't emptiness. It was filled with unspoken memories, deep sadness, and a growing unease about what was happening behind palace doors. And when he finally chose to speak, the revelation sent shockwaves far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. McGrady, now in his 60s, had worked closely with Diana. He saw her not just as a royal, but as a warm-hearted woman who brought life and compassion into the cold corridors of the monarchy. So when he noticed what happened after Camilla moved into Clarence House, and eventually Buckingham Palace, he couldn't stay silent any longer. It began quietly, so quietly that most wouldn't have noticed. But for those who knew Diana intimately, it was like watching her spirit being erased piece by piece. McGrady recalled how the cozy touches Diana had lovingly added to her private room slowly vanished. The soft pastels she adored, the family photographs she proudly displayed, the English roses she loved, all gone. Even her favorite flowers, forget-me-nots and lilies, were replaced with Camilla's choices. Furniture was shuffled around or taken out entirely. It did not feel like a simple makeover, it felt like a rewriting of history. To McGrady, this was not just about interior design, it was about Diana's memory and how carefully, quietly, it was being scrubbed away. But perhaps the most painful symbol Diana embraced wholeheartedly was what happened to her photographs. Once proudly displayed in the palace's hallways, images of joy, warmth, and a mother's love slowly began to disappear. At first, they were simply moved to less visible places, then tucked into private rooms, and eventually, they vanished altogether. Only one photo remained, McGrady said, and it was hidden in a room the public never saw. But even that last image did not survive. After a few years, it too was removed. For McGrady, that was the final blow. It was not even Diana anymore, he said, it was just a photograph. And even that was too much for her. That was the moment he said the words that captured headlines across the globe. She is pure evil. He did not say it for attention. He did not say it in anger. He said it in shock and from a place of love for the woman he once served. He believed what was happening was not accidental, it was calculated. It was a deliberate attempt to push Diana out of the picture both literally and symbolically. Palace insiders tried to brush off the changes as part of a new chapter, a natural evolution as Camilla took on a more public role. But to McGrady and many who had known Diana personally, that explanation did not hold up. It was not just about moving forward but about rewriting the past. McGrady said the stark contrast between the two women made it all the more painful. Diana had brought warmth, spontaneity, and joy into the palace. She would wander barefoot into the kitchen for a glass of orange juice. She would quietly load her car with blankets for the homeless. Her light was unmistakable. But when Camilla moved in, that light was gone. The air felt colder. The hall seemed quieter. And the compassion Diana had filled them with slowly faded. Even as Camilla climbed from private partner to Queen Consort, McGrady stayed mostly silent, living in the United States, running his catering business, and quietly honoring Diana's memory through charity work. But watching Camilla's rise stirred something in him. He supported the coronation, he said, because he believed in moving forward. But moving forward did not mean covering up the past. He was not speaking out of bitterness. He was speaking out of loyalty to Diana and the truth. She endured so much, he said. The least I can do is protect her story, all of it, even the uncomfortable parts. Royal protocols on personal artifacts in the royal family are strict. Every detail, even something as simple as a photograph, follows strict protocol. Unlike ordinary families, the royals do not just change their decor on a whim. Every item in a royal home, from the chairs to the portraits, has a purpose tied to a carefully crafted legacy. There are specific rules and processes in place, especially when it comes to personal artifacts like a wedding photograph. Such objects are not simply moved or altered without careful consideration. Royal tradition dictates that any change to the display of items must pass through multiple layers of authority, from the master of the household to the Royal Collection Trust and even the sovereign. Nothing is just taken down or discarded without a series of quiet decisions behind closed doors. However, the rules were not followed when Princess Diana's iconic wedding portrait was removed from public view at Clarence House. In this case, there was no careful process or respectful relocation. The photograph was not moved to a private area nor was it archived for historical preservation. Instead, it was unceremoniously dumped, an act that breached royal protocol. Camilla's arrival marked more than just a shift in the household's atmosphere. It symbolized a complete break from the past. The photograph, once a symbol of Diana's place in the royal family, was discarded without a trace, a gesture that spoke volumes about the monarchy's desire to distance itself from the painful history of the past. Darren McGrady's explosive revelation sent shockwaves through the public, sparking an uproar on social media within hours of his interview being released. His emotional and candid words gave voice to suspicions that had simmered for years, especially among Diana's loyal supporters. They had long believed that the beloved princess had been treated unfairly during her life, and even more so after her death. "Darren, thank you for finally telling the truth," one user wrote. "You have said what so many of us have felt for years." Messages poured in by the thousands, applauding McGrady's honesty and unwavering loyalty to Diana. For many, his statements were seen as a long-overdue validation, offering a rare insider's confirmation of what the public had only guessed at but could never prove. Yet McGrady's words were not universally welcomed. Critics quickly questioned his timing, with some asking why he waited until now to speak out. Why wait until after celebrating the coronation, one detractor wondered. Others accused him of seeking attention or profiting from old wounds. But McGrady's supporters were quick to defend him, pointing out that he had remained silent for over 2 decades. "If anyone has earned the right to speak, it is him," one fan declared. As McGrady's revelations reignited Diana's legacy, old interviews, videos, and quotes resurfaced across social media. Fan accounts dedicated to her gained thousands of new followers overnight. The message was clear: the public had not forgotten the people's princess, and McGrady's words reopened a wound that never truly healed. Now, with McGrady's explosive claims reverberating across headlines, Queen Camilla's carefully curated public image faces its biggest challenge yet. For years, she had slowly transformed from the other woman to a more accepted figure at Charles's side. But McGrady's insights have cast a harsh light on her actions behind the palace walls, prompting many to ask what happens next. Supporters of the monarchy insist that Camilla has earned her place and should be allowed to move forward. But her critics, especially Diana loyalists, are not ready to let go. For them, Camilla's ascension to the throne feels tainted by the pain and betrayal it took to reach it. Palace insiders remain tight-lipped, adhering to the royal family's age-old never complain, never explain mantra. But silence may no longer be enough to quell the growing unrest. With McGrady's revelation surfacing so close to Camilla's coronation, the stakes could not be higher. The world is watching Camilla more closely than ever. How long can she maintain the mask, and what do you think about McGrady's shocking revelation? Share your thoughts in the comments and do not forget to like and subscribe.